I have a couple of things to say before I start. And one of them is we couldn't make time for everyone. As 40 years of heroes we've had. I'm Barry. Can't you read? I'm Barry Romo. And and so the event is kind of moving along well. We are going to have an open mic tonight. We had an open mic at the party last night, and it kicked ass. It really was of value. And people shouldn't feel because it's an open mic that somehow it's what you're saying is less. We just have to fit some stuff in. Last night was probably the happiest night of my life since I got back from Vietnam. Seeing my brothers and sisters, some who I haven't seen for 5 years, some who I haven't seen for 10 years, some who I have for 30 fucking years. And I have to tell you the honest-to-God truth, the absolute joy last night and today is people always talk when you see vets about how the people they served with in combat were closer than their families, people that they could trust more than anyone else. And I believe that back from Vietnam, and I even said that when I would go out and speak at high schools. And I learned something. I was in Oakland where I would speak, and I saw Chiquilla after Gary had died, and I got to hug her, and she was fighting against a stroke, and she sends her love. She wishes she could be here, and she's still a proud VVAW member. And I saw her in the audience, and I connected. We'd got old, and she'd had a stroke, and I shaved my head. But I knew that if we were at the barricades, I knew if the cops were knocking on a door, that woman would give me half her canteen. If she had only half a canteen, she'd give me a quarter canteen. Brothers and sisters, all of us would share canteens. All of us have stood up against a system of injustice, of racism, of imperialism. We've put our lives on the line. We've trusted each other. I trust you. I don't trust those people I was in Vietnam with. I don't know where they're at. If they're not against war, if they're not against racism, I don't care. You people are my family. You people get me through the night. I am so proud of my friends and my activist friends. Last night was probably my hardest night. I don't know why. I don't have nightmares very often. And Jeff forced me to stay awake drinking. I didn't want to do it. Damn you, Jeff. Damn you. And then out the cognac. Oh, no, that was me. And I didn't want to sleep. You know, a lot of times you don't want to sleep. And someone put someone up in our room. I didn't know it, but we had an extra room. A brother from California who is a brother. And I was fighting the demons, brothers, sisters. I didn't think I could wake up. And he came in and he woke me up. And I know that sounds silly maybe to some people who haven't fought those demons. And he had a cup of coffee, and he had some rolls, and he said, "Brother, you're having a hard time." And I woke up, and I was disoriented, and I was incredibly sad because of my men who have died, my nephew, whose body I brought back from Vietnam, and so happy to be woken up by my new comrade, someone I can trust, someone who will help me get through the night. And that's what VVAW is all about. It's not about us running for office. John Kerry never knew what VVAW was about. It wasn't a road to fame or glory. It was about us standing together. VVAW not only opposed war, we opposed the culture of war. For the first time since Napoleon said, I can find men to die just to give them a piece of ribbon and a medal, we stood up and we threw that medal back. Working class people, the only thing we get is those damn medals that say when we were 19 and 20 that we nothing and the rest of our lives are full of shit. We said, damn you, take this fucking shit and shove it. We challenged a culture that they couldn't deal with more than if we'd have picked up guns. Picking up guns would have been easy. But the culture to embrace another generation. Stop Vietnam Vets Against the War was the last group to have a demonstration against the war in 1974, as Bill Davis said. People fighting cops, people getting beat up, and the press didn't give a fuck. Didn't matter. We were true to our Vietnamese comrades. We were true to the people that we had oppressed. We were no longer good soldiers. We were no longer fucking heroes. We sided with the enemy, and we were proud of it. We had the last demonstration. We hoped there would never be another Vietnam. In the 80s, we demonstrated. In the 80s, we sent delegations to Nicaragua. In the 80s, we demonstrated across the country for a no new Vietnam in Central America. We did personal bodyguard work for leadership and for FMLN leadership, for guerrillas from Africa, in our Fatigues for Freedom Fighter program, where we fucking gave guerrillas our fatigues that we had wore to oppress people to win their liberation. It's not much, but it was a lot. We didn't think another Vietnam would happen. The 90s came. Thank God we had Clinton. a respite in a sea. Not that I like him, for God's sakes. But it seems like good times compared to what we've got. I never thought in my entire life, I got arrested. I hated Nixon. I went to his birthplace and to piss on his grave. My daughter was running around. Dad, you're going to get arrested. Dad. And so I was out front with my poor daughter, and I'm going like this, and she's going, Daddy, not one more time. I can't get arrested. And I said, sweetheart, take that picture. Because the faster you get a picture of me flipping off this motherfucker, the quicker we're going to get out of here. And that motherfucker was a liberal to what we've got. This guy is absolute worse, the absolute biggest degenerate. And he brought a Vietnam that no other else would have done in Iraq. Nobody else would have fucking done it. Thought we had taught the American public a lesson. We didn't. We have challenges as we get older. We have challenges as we have to take multiple amounts of pills just to get through the day. And then there's the pills to get us through the night. Then there's the alcohol to make the pills go down just right. But that ain't enough. We have to start marching again. And you know what? In 2 years, if we work really fucking hard, maybe we can make amend after the next election and someone else. Maybe. But if not, then we keep marching. That's why God made those little hover rounds. You know, when we can't march no more, 500 at the 60th anniversary, we'll be in Washington, D.C. in hover rounds, bayonets coming out the side of the wheels, fighting cops. There ain't no baton. We ain't passing it on. We love you, our younger brothers and our sisters in Iraq, vets against the war. We ain't going no place. We're going to get behind you because you're a little bit faster in our hover rounds. We'll only go so fast. But that means as we get older and wiser, and we know what a big pile of shit this system is, and this government is, we know that we can't let it lie. When we were younger, in the 70s, we thought America learned something that they didn't learn, and that's how come we're in Iraq. And if this time we don't end it right, if this time we don't challenge it in high schools and college campuses, if we don't go out and tell a younger generation, with a younger generation, what the military is about, what wars are about, that the people we're shooting are human beings, not kooks, not slopes, not slant eyes, not camel jockeys, not sand niggers. They're human beings. That means we may get to retire and we can only speak at 1 or 2 high schools a week, but it means we can't stop. It means that we sum up the war. After the Civil War, with the destruction of Reconstruction, black people were put back in virtual slavery for 120, 30 years because that war wasn't summed up right. The South was wrong, the South was wrong, the South was wrong, the North was right, period. And that should have been what Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural said. If we lose all our treasure and we have to bleed for every drop of blood of the master's whip and lash, then that is what we have to pay. This time, we have to sum up that we can't go overseas, we can't have merry adventures, we have a role to play that no one else can do, that no one else can challenge. I shave my head. I still go out to high schools forever. Half the reason is because I'm going bald, and half the reason it's partially white, and half the reason is so the kids don't look at me like I'm Gabby Hayes. But one of the is they respect us more. Aaron and I went to an all-black high school, the worst school in this city. And the ROTC instructors were black. One was a major who had never seen combat. One was an E7 who had never seen combat. And Jackson, Potter, and Kurt, who used to teach there, we went into the school for a military. And they fucking squeezed every bit of black nationalism they could get. Oh, you know, I couldn't go to school, and you know, it wasn't for ROTC. I wouldn't be college educated. And the black students didn't stand with them. They stood with Aaron and me, the 2 white guys in the room. They listened to us because what we said was the truth. And one of the things I keep saying, and I keep telling everyone, if someone tells you to enlist, ask kids are. You have a recruiter, and what we found out afterwards was one of the black young ladies that organized and chaired the debate came up and went, they have 2 kids, the major, who never saw combat, EIB. Fucking EIB. I can throw a fucking fake hand grenade. 200 feet. I don't give a fuck. EIB. And you know where his 2 kids are? In college. And he tried to get every goddamn black kid there to enlist. And they listened to when we said the war is wrong, but more importantly, if George Bush tells you to go fight, tell him you're going after the twins go. How much time do I have? 2 minutes? 2 minutes? Oh, 2 minutes to 10 minutes. Thank you. Or 2 minutes. Oh, no, I got another. Right? My brother, the timekeeper. Yes. I just wanted to make sure I hit some points. We have to do that. I'm thinking maybe next year, if Iraq Vets Against the War wants to do it, we may have to march again. But only if they want to do it. And only us following them. Not with our big ideas. Not with anything but decent benefit, regardless of discharge. Let our brothers and our sisters go. And the war now. As big as it can be. As big as it can be. I never thought I would give back time. But this event is so close. And I really accomplished what I wanted to say. But I have a couple of other things that I have to say. Eleanor. Shorty. Our oldest member, World War II, Korea. Raise your hand. Raise your World War II and Korea. Damn. We have some other people. You know, they never let me near the bank account except to sign checks. They never let me know how much money we had. In the 80s, Pete used to always say, if you find out how much money we don't have, it'll just stop you from doing shit you're going to do anyway. We kept the organization going without money, and we never had to file taxes because we never had more than 25 grand a year. We had 9 grand, we paid no salaries. And we had to become more professional because people started looking at us. And we had to become more professional because Hannah figured out ways to help us raise funds that we couldn't figure out. And one of the people that does the largest amount of shit work is Jeff Machota. Jeff Machota does the books. Jeff Machota does the website. Jeff Machota does the newspaper. Jeff Machota does the taxes. And Jeff Machota won't give a fucking speech. And when he got directed to take over the people had given up because I put the paper out, and a few of us did. And everyone would want to get their issue. And the first person that would count up the largest amount of spelling mistakes I'd made in headlines would get a free bundle of the papers. And so even though you got the paper, you were never quite sure what language it might have been in. And if you've noticed how great the papers have got, and I get every time get better and better. Right there. We have other people that are going to speak, and so I'm not going to do that. But Hannah's going to speak, but I have to make her stand up. And We exist because non-vets are willing to sweat blood to keep this organization going. And Hannah's one of those people. This group, really, believe me, we wouldn't be meeting like this if it wasn't for the kind of work that Hannah has done. And we have to thank her. She's going to speak a little bit. National staff beat in the head more than any other member of VVAW except Danny Friedman. Danny would go to a demonstration and a police baton. It was like due north. Him and Friedman had to be beat or the demonstration wasn't of value. He does national staff work now, won't be a coordinator, and he's another person, not a coordinator, a staff person that helps us get through the night. I already thanked the local people, and so I'm not gonna thank them one last. And we're gonna eat, and then in an hour we're gonna come back, and we have some people to talk about why VVAW is important to them in an hour. But also, we want to have you. And so we need a good camera. And before we start the meeting, we have to figure out a way we can get all of our pictures. So someone who knows how to do that. Someone, I work at the post office. I don't know how to get your letters to you on time. Are we ready to... Anytime. What? 5 minutes? Smoking them if you... Excellent. Great idea. Great idea.
I've just been asked to remind you that please, if you can, VVAW is accepting donations for the food today. And where are they supposed to leave their donations? There's a box on the table. Apparently you already know about that. So I'm just reminding you.
Come forward. We are going to take a photograph. We are exactly on time. We want to keep this going. So, 10 minutes. Oh, wait. Not. And if you want to, you can start gathering out here for the photo op. For the stairway for the photo op. one of the three staff people that opened the meeting up? What time is it?
20 after 1, almost 20 after
Well, we're pulling the meeting together. And, of course, mentioned the other staff first. That is not the only staff there is. And I want to point some other people out who won't be speaking. And we have a national coordinator who really puts in a lot of time on the computer so that when people contact us, they don't have me responding with delayed stress, fire wall stuff. And that person who has really stepped forward has been John Zutz, who also has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Indo-Chinese people. And best of all, he made it by selling beer. It's almost like heaven. I'm drinking for Vietnam. Oh, I'm drinking for Laos. Thank you, John. And of course, we made Dave Kettenhofen, or rather, take his basement and convert it into the VVAW specialty shop. And so when PX, when you get your T-shirts and your hats, when you get all that great stuff, I wish we could get it to you sooner, but the post office, never mind. But Dave, would you please stand up? Dave has been a stalwart through good days and bad times. Is Bill Perry here? Bill? Okay, yeah. Did I forget anyone? Hannah, did I forget anyone? Kurt, did I forget anyone? No, so I'm going to introduce. Okay, I'm in control, and I'm going to move it along. I want to say one of the things that is great is working with other. Oh, and he came in late. National coordinator, and you're from Philadelphia, Bill Perry. We've also, besides IVAW and working with the younger vets, we've all throughout our movement careers have tried to work with and pass along things that we've learned, and we've been lucky. It's been a two-way street, learning from people that we're working with. And a very short introduction. Bill Branson and I were training people to do security because the Branson will not allow the movement not to pass on what we learned through hard knocks. And he's, can't do it health-wise anymore. But we were down in Champaign, and we had taught people how to do shit, and then we were like looking over our friends' shoulders to make sure they didn't get hurt. But there was this young woman and another young woman, and first time they're doing security, isolating a predator, and not making sure that it didn't interrupt the meeting so that the speakers could continue in the best way. Security, having people not realizing they're getting rid of evil people. And we said, oh shit, she kicks ass. And so we're lucky, I'm lucky to introduce Brooke Anderson from Oakland, California, who we've worked with for about 20 years. I think she was in diapers. Brooke.
Hi, good afternoon. So that would have made me 8, taking down sexual predators. I'm only 28. Thank you, Barry. So my name's Brooke Anderson. I met VVAW in 1997 down in Champaign, Illinois. There was a crew of us college students who were doing various types of organizing. We were doing anti-racist organizing against Chief Illiniwek, who we just managed to finally eliminate this past year. Just largely to the efforts of folks like Jeff Machota, who started that work many, many years ago. We were doing anti-racial harassment organizing. We were doing anti-war organizing amongst a number of different wars. And we met VVAW folks. We were putting on a 500-person town hall on the issue of Chief Illiniwek. And VVA folks like Barry and Bill, they came down to Champaign. They did security workshops for us. They told us stories of kicking the asses of the Nazis. They told us about Miami. They told us about getting beat by the police. And we were just like wide-eyed college kids. And we were like, wow, this was really good they had that kind of protection in that day. Thank God I'm not organizing in that climate, right? And little did we know we would face, not nearly the same intensity, but some of the same threats. And thank God for VVAW for the security training that we received from them. We had a good relationship between VVAW and younger folks down in Champaign. We would come up here for Memorial Day and Veterans Day actions. We would come to the 4th of July barbecues and spend many a hot, sticky summer nights with huge bonfires. We would go to the Halloween parties. We would go and help serve food and clean up at the stand downs. And we participated and marched under the VVAW banner in the big anti-war demonstrations. What they did for us, they came down and spoke in our classes, in college classrooms, one after another, in our high school classrooms. They did political study groups with us. They taught us movement history. They went and got tattoos that hopefully they don't regret with us. It was a relationship that was, for young activists, absolutely indispensable to our work. Just a couple stories. I have never seen, well, maybe last night, but other than that, never seen Barry so happy as watching the video after some of us women had been organizing this demonstration called Take Back the Night to try to improve women's conditions on campus. And men were determined they were going to help us women by taking back the night with us and marching with us. And they weren't allowed to march. And when they tried to march, I called up Barry the morning and said, they're men, they're determined to march. What are we going to do with them? And I thought he'd have some really sage security advice about remembering how to take people down. He said, no. What you do is you go out and you buy these big super soaker guns and you put people on the roof with the super soaker guns with vinegar and you aim for their crotches. They'll never come out again. And where else could I get advice like that except from VVAW? And we didn't do that, and I really regret it, because when else would I have put that kind of training into use? But I've never seen Barry so happy as when we showed him the tape of when we had like 4 or 5 women, security trained, badass from VVAW, nailing this guy, sort of spread eagle to this bar in front of a door. He had been trying to kick the ass of some of the women who had been participating, and Barry knew he had done his job, and we appreciated that. And I think it was a special relationship in particular between young women that were getting active in the movement and veterans. A lot of the women that grew up in my generation of activism came out with a very different type of trauma, but some of the same trauma from rape, from sexual assault, from sexual harassment, from child molestation, who were dealing with this grief as they organized. And when they went out and tried to get help from normal sources, from the rape crisis centers, from the self-help groups, they were told, you need to take care of yourself. You don't need to be organizing. When you take care of yourself, then you can go out and you'll be able to organize. And that didn't feel right to a whole generation of women who are struggling with the sort of grief and the anger and the trauma of abuse. And when we met VVAW, they told us our stories of dealing with their grief and their anger and their trauma from the war and how organizing saved their lives. And that was a message that at that time a lot of us really needed to hear, that organizing is how you deal with that grief, and organizing is how you change the world so folks after you don't have to feel that. Who had volunteered for security, and they were, by the time I got there, they were already talking about, we're gonna kick some ass. They were all posh, all like, I'll help on security. And I got the, oh honey, that's all right, we got it. You know, they need help putting up signs for the bathroom. And it was just this, oh, isn't that girl's going to volunteer for security? And they're still doing that. Thank you, Annie. And I'm really embarrassed. I walked away. I actually walked away. I've been trained in security. I've done security for 10 years. I actually went and put up the bathroom signs. And I felt pretty humiliated. And I went back to Champaign. This last winter, I was telling Jeff and Claudia, and they're like, how did you take that? You go back there to Oakland. Tell them you know how to do security. And I did. And people out in the Bay Area think they're all friends because it's progressive, but it's not. And we went and we trained security, and some of the other folks who'd been VVAW trained from Chicago and from Champaign went to the Bay, did security for the immigrant rights organizing that happened on May 1st last year, 2 years ago. And we did security at a hotel that I'm organizing. And when the hotel imported and put up in their hotel hate squads from Davis that did the Capture the Illegal Immigrant Games on May 1st, came to our hotel with signs that say, illegals go home. They shouted at the young children of the housekeepers that I'm working to organize. You're from Mexico, go, right? Our security was there. And by the time with them, they were cordoned off in a little security block surrounded and looking sad. And that's what organizing is about, right? We're organized, we protect ourselves, we treat each other like family. When we don't stick up for ourselves, when we get intimidated, when we let some of the sexism, some of the racism that's in the rest of the movement get us down, we have VVAW to get us right back out. And VVAW folks are my absolute heroes, my mentors, my inspiration. And you know, it's funny, as a younger person in the movement, I'm getting less young as it goes, but I think we get a lot of this that's like, folks come up to you and I'm like, oh, we're tired, like, thank goodness there's new folks in the movement, so some of us on and know that the rest of y'all are gonna take, like, that doesn't fly, right? One, because my generation is active. We're not the few, right? We're the many. And it's not there's a select folks of young organizers. Our generation is going to be rising up the same way other generations have. And then, on the other way, too, like, you don't get to sit down. Barry was telling me last night about this Vietnamese fellow that came and was literally sort of like in his, really winding down after returning from doing a delegation here, and gave sort of the last breaths of his life to VVAW and to the cause. And we're going to take your last few. So don't you sit down. We need you guys. And, you've taught us your history. You've taught us your history. You've taught us your tactics, your strategy. You've taught us what it really means to love the folks that you're in struggle with. And a little bit about how to drink and fall backwards over chairs. I'm still working on that one. So we appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
I've still got one breath left. I always wondered what the hardest job was. And I love teachers and teaching. If you care, is the hardest job that there is. Medicine is some kind of satisfaction, but and college professors, I love you. I love all of our little professors here. But the hardest job is a high school teacher. You've got those, and their hormones are running when their testosterone says, I've got to go fight. I want to join the military. I've got to do all of this shit. And people who teach high school imprint in a generation what's really going on around them if they care. I've been so lucky. Everyone from the Davises to a lot of other people who are here, and I'm looking at. And but one of the younger persons that we work with is Kurt, who moved here, that we had been working with for a long time in Champaign. And he went straight to the worst high school in the city. Dedicated, because those people are human beings, and if you put your time in, Those people can be saved, they can be educated, and they can learn. And that ain't easy to do day after day with the kind of city at least Chicago is, and I'm sure all the other places that we've got around the country. And so we asked Kurt to make a few comments as one of those that's molding the upcoming generation.
Yeah, as Barry mentioned, I've been involved in doing VVAW stuff pretty much the same time as Brooke, but she's a little older than me, so she may have a year or two on me. I think my first contact with VVAW was taking a class in the basement of my dorm when I was a freshman at the University of Illinois, meeting up with Joe Miller, who was standing around here somewhere, and and at this time I had really tall, poofy, kind of curly red hair, a few inches off the top of my head, and Jeff put some pictures in it in the slideshow that's playing later, so if you all want to see, feel free to make comments later this evening. But Joe said, like as soon as I walked in and gave my rant why I wanted to be political, that he was going to like me. A pretty good matchup with the organization. As Barry said, I'm now a teacher in the Chicago Public Schools. I'm a history teacher. I teach at John Hope High School in the Englewood neighborhood on the south side here of Chicago. For those of you who aren't from town or maybe don't know, Englewood is probably the most impoverished and one of the most violent neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. Just in terms of my students, my school is 100% an apartheid school. It is 99.9% African American and one Asian dude walking around occasionally, and that's it out of 1,200 students. I've been at John Hope for 1 year, and before I was there, I taught at Englewood High School, which had been a high school that had been open for 130 years, but had been chronically funded, had been relegated to being one of the schools of last resort where the kids who had been kicked out of other schools were sent. It was in the neighborhood that was in the most violent and impoverished area of the city, and so the school was labeled failing. And what happened is that the school, rather than actually infusing new teachers, rather than putting in the resources and the support staff and just to try to turn the school around, the Chicago Board of Education decided to close it down, privatize it, turn it into an all-boys charter school that was run by a former principal of a Catholic school, and all the kids in the process were labeled. Of the year at the beginning, I guess the beginning of 2006, I was the 4th teacher in the classroom that year. They kind of wondered, what is this skinny white kid doing in here? The first couple of weeks were pretty tough, but after I stayed in, they kind of realized, like, he's here for a reason, and he's not going to leave us. And then after I was there every day, never late, I got laid off because the school was being closed down. And so, fortunately, I moved to another school in the neighborhood. But I mean, in terms of the neighborhood, all African American, 95% plus qualify for free lunch. Most of the, or reduced price, but most of those are free lunch. So we're talking about incredible amount of poverty and an incredible concentration, incredible racial segregation that goes on in the neighborhood. And the interesting thing is that the school where I used to teach, when kids get sent out, and so the mode in the Chicago Public Schools is to say, all right, we're going to close down a school, but we're not going to have any plan for where the kids are going to go. It might be in Austin on the west side. We're going to close down your high school. We're going to send you 3 or 4 neighborhoods to the east across 4 or 5 different gang territories so that when you have to go to school in the morning, you may or may not get there in one piece or in your health. And you wonder why kids don't want to come to school, why they drop out, why they're not engaged. And so the formation plan has had these huge impacts and it's just caused all this dislocation in the city of Chicago. And so the issue to me is, given to have the privilege to go to college twice, be able to be educated, that it was a matter of not only just what was a matter of justice, it was a matter of civil rights, it was a matter of this is the only place I can see myself teaching. And I think a lot of that comes out of background coming up through VVAW, through being involved in different organizations, doing anti-racism work, doing anti-war work, doing all of this different kinds of sort of organizing that I had been doing to this point. And so I look at my job as not just an educational job, but also as sort of an organizing and an empowerment job, because these kids, like, they've been pushed off time and time and time again. And so one of the things that I think is vital for vets, whether they be vets of Vietnam, vets of Iraq, vets of World War II, it doesn't matter. Anti-war vets need to come into schools and speak. because there's a lot of reasons for it. But I mean, one of the reasons that the kids know vets, but a lot of times they don't know anything about what the vets have gone through because they haven't spoke or they haven't done anything to where they get to know somebody, what those experiences are. And so getting to know Vietnam vets they may or may not have in their families, getting to know Iraq vets, getting to hear their stories is really powerful. Talking about the issues of PTSD, talking about what's going on. I had Barry and Aaron come to speak to my class, and they spoke 7 times in one day. It was unbelievable, just the fact that just knowing what they were going through to get through that day in and day out. And that commitment, the kids appreciated it. They asked great questions. They were really into it. They were really well, which was much better than they would have behaved in my class if I was the only one there. And so it really gives them a chance to sort of see history as being real, as being something that's not off in a book that sucks, that they hate, but rather that there are people who are in their own town who have gone through these experiences. It also gives the kids a chance to hear a message, hey, don't go to the military. At Englewood High School, Barry mentioned this earlier, there was an ROTC program where I would imagine maybe half the kids were in it. There was a huge number. The people who ran it were encouraging them to sign up and to get recruited, and there were people in the building all the time recruiting. And these kids are the target market. They're the ones who, they don't have any options. They don't think they're going to be able to go to college, and so the military looks really, really attractive in that sense. And it became our job as teachers who understood why this was a problem to sort of keep the kids and steer them away. And the interesting thing is that all of my kids hate Bush with a passion. Like yeah, it's great, man. They're anti-war. But they also were like, so do you like Bush? And I just looked at him. I was like, and I kind of was mad at them. I was like, are you kidding me? And then, but it was that gave them a chance to sort of see that it's not that people who are older understand what's going on. It's not, and that they are, with them, that they're actually connected with the kids. It also was interesting too because I had, when the March 20th stuff was going on here in Chicago, I offered a 100-point extra credit assignment to any student who wanted to go, and I had 140 freshmen, by the way, so this is a little bit of an interesting scenario. Anybody who wanted to go, I give them 100 went to the demonstration and wrote an article about it, like they were a journalist. And this is kind of an interesting thing because this is kind of a hard assignment. A lot of us would be like, oh, okay, that's easy. We know where it's at. We'll get on the train. Well, the kids may not be able to leave. There's a lot of violence. Their parents may not let them go for obviously very understandable reasons, or they may not just have the resources to get there and get back. I had one student go, and that was awesome. And he brought me back the sign from the demonstration, and he asked me, he's like, Mr. Hilgendorf, which is weird being called that, by the way. Hey, I got the sign, you want it? And I was like, yeah, I want it, bring it in. And so he brought it in. I didn't make him write the assignment. I gave him the 100 extra credit points because that was way better than any assignment was going to be. And the first thing I did was hang it on, like the first thing you did when you walked in my classroom was you did this anti-war sign, U.S. out of Iraq now. And I was so glad that he had brought that in and shared it with us. Now, that also went with the anti-apartheid signs that I had them draw up and a bunch of other stuff that was in my room. But it was great, too, because then when Barry and Aaron came in, Joe asked, hey, is that old dude who was speaking at the event? I was like, yeah. So there's a couple of other reasons why it's important, I think, for the students or like why vets should come and speak in schools, because teachers love it. We work a lot, and we also get a whole summer off. I've been on summer vacation for 2 months. I can't complain about that. But time somebody wants to come to speak and like take the effort out of us, like we will gladly give up our class time to have somebody else put in the effort to work with the kids, because A, we want to break, and B, we understand how important it is as like living history to have people come in and speak and to be involved. And then the last thing is that the students really love it too. I gave as part of my final was that you had to do a survey and tell me what you thought of the class. And there were at least a half a dozen kids who thought that the best lesson that we did all year was having vets come in to speak and having them get a chance to ask questions and be heard. And so anytime that, even if it's 6 out of 140 or 60 kids were there that day, it doesn't really matter in the sense that those 6 kids were able to connect with somebody and were really able to go into an issue that's a lot deeper than just what they would get otherwise. And so I would encourage anyone who has a connection to a school, whether it be a school like mine, quote unquote, at risk, whether it be in the suburbs, whether it be in a rural area, wherever it is, college, high school, get into the schools, speak to the people, the kids, talk to the teachers too. They love to hear you. But this is a civil rights issue. It's connected to VVAW's historical role as being an anti-racist, civil rights supporting organization. And so from my perspective, having vets in the schools and being a teacher is not only just a matter of having a job or being an educator, but also it's a fundamental matter of justice. So thank you. I'm honored to have a chance to speak.